The third key is this idea of an outline. Using some type of device that forces you into making an outline. And finally, the big point is this idea of a topic sentence. The standing crop of algae fluctuated cyclically during the 7-week period. If I can put the word "for example" in there, I know that it's a good topic sentence. Okay? So that's a very, very important idea. So this is the first, and we are going to come back to this over and over again, the idea of organization and topic sentences. Now, when we do our discussion, we use the same idea as the results. We follow the same sequence, still using topic sentences. So, let's kind of look again at our structure of this paper. The introduction is the importance of grazing in aquatic systems, importance of grazing in ecosystems. Then we get narrower, grazing in aquatic systems, still narrower, experimental studies of grazing, and then very narrow, what our specific study did. The reason I have followed this sequence, methods, results, discussion, introduction, is that to me, this is the sequence you should follow when you're writing a scientific paper. Do the methods first, that's the easiest, then do the results, then the discussion, and then end by writing the introduction. Too often students start by writing the introduction not knowing what they're going to find. The introduction to me should be the last thing that you write. You start your paper by maybe writing your objectives, but you end the writing by writing your full introduction. So I think that's a real hint to give you. So you start by doing your methods, then your results, what did you find, your discussion, what does it mean, and then end with your introduction. Okay, so let's go on with a few more ideas. Of course, the abstract of your paper is really the last thing that you write, because that summarizes the information that you contained. Now let me ask anybody if I've given you a hint about a way that maybe you could, after your paper is completely written, an easy way to write your abstract. Does anybody have an idea of what I've said so far that may give you a hint about an easy way to write an abstract based on what we've said with topic sentences? Anybody have an idea? Excellent. Did you hear what she said? If you take each of your topic sentences and put them together, it gives you an overview of the most important points of your paper. So for a start, because usually it will be too long, but for a start of writing an abstract, just pull all of your topic sentences out, and that's your first draft of your abstract. Very, very good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so that's one thing that we'll talk about. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go through all of the different parts of a scientific paper and talk a little about each one, and I hope this will bring some discussion and questions from you. Okay, the title. The title of the paper is the most important thing that you can do. It's the most important thing that you can do, because this is what's read by hundreds of people, and based on the title, they will decide whether they should read the abstract. from the abstract, they will decide if they should read the entire paper. So the title is very, very important. Now, this is also something we do during the end. For example, we have a working title. The effects of caddisfly grazing on stream algae. That's not the final title. That's the title we use as we work on the paper. We then have develop this a little further by simply coming up with different words that may be useful in the title. Now, for example, the word caddisfly, because this was the study organism. The word grazing, because this is the process that we are studying. Herbivory is another word for grazing. Stream, because this is the habitat we're studying. Algae, this is the organisms that the grazers are eating. Bacteria, they're eating that too, but usually we call bacteria and algae together periphyton. And maybe we should put the word experimental in, because experimental is kind of an unusual way of studying grazing. So we take all these words and concepts in the title and we put them together with a final title, stream periphyton. Periphyton is algae and bacteria and insect herbivores. And this is a colon, and I'll come back to this a little later. An experimental study of grazing by a caddisfly population. In other words, we're constantly fooling around with the title. We're constantly changing it to try to come up with a title that is going to get people to read the article, that's going to convey information that may say, this is worth you reading. The key is a lot of times people use phrases like this. Studies on. No, you'd never use that. Investigations of. No, you should never use that. Observations on. No, these are unnecessary words. You shouldn't be using them in the title. And these are, maybe 50 years ago, this would have been appropriate to use, but in modern science, we don't use these words in the title. These are very old-fashioned words, and they just add nothing except make the title longer. So we should remember that a title is not a sentence, it's simply a label. And I want to give you an example of how important a title can be from a physiologist, a person that's doing the physiology of animals in Australia. His entire career, he worked on the physiology of temperature regulation, of thermoregulation in these little Australian animals that are called Tasmanian devils. They're a little like the wolf, like a wolf. Now, for years he published papers with titles like this: Thermoregulation in the Tasmanian Devil. And he would always get about 50 to 60 requests for reprints of the article. One paper, he changed it, and he simply made it a question. Does the devil sweat? He put a question in the front, and then he called it Thermoregulation in the Tasmanian Devil. In other words, he did a simple modification of the title, and he ended up having over 1,000 reprint requests. So 20 times as many people were interested in the topic when he changed the title. So I think this is a very important lesson about how titles can be very, very important. Now, I used the term before when I showed you, let me just go back.